Hello, I'm Anne and welcome back to my channel. A little background on me is I don't like spending money. I am very frugal, thrifty. I don't know. There's like a worse word for that, but I can't think of it right now. I am the type of person who will go shopping at 20 stores until I find something that is cheap enough to buy. However, I find that there is one place that never, ever lets me down, and that is the Goodwill. For those who don't have access to this wonderful, amazing store, the Goodwill was kind of founded to be a charity organization where you donate things and then they are sold for incredibly low prices. Usually a lot of people think of the Goodwill as being mostly exclusively clothes, which they are, but a lot of people don't realize just how many other things they carry, like this mug. I got this mug for $1.99, and I'm very particular about my tea mugs because I drink so much tea that if it's not like the perfect size, like I need to be able to hold it. It needs to have like a firm, big size, and so many of them don't. So there's that. Every time I move my cup, it's just gonna like shake the thing that you're on. But being as addicted as I am to reading books and to buying books, because aren't we all, it makes sense that I would go to the Goodwill not for clothes, which I do go for clothes and other things and teacups, but for books. So today I'm going to be doing a Goodwill book haul. For me, it's so important to be able to buy books at a low price because I'm a struggling college student, and let's face it, I can't spend like $10 to $20 on a hardback copy of a new release. It's just not feasible for me. So most of my collection of books, everything you see behind me, about 75% of them I got from the Goodwill. So that tells you just how much I buy from the Goodwill. I will say when I first started to go to the Goodwill, books were a little bit cheaper. They were like 99 cents for a softback and $1.49 for a hardback. However, now in Ohio, at least is where I live, it is currently $1.99 for a softback and I believe $2.49, so $2.50 for a hardback. But still, that is incredibly cheap compared to a full price book that can be between like 10 to 15 up to 20 to $30 nowadays. Now, obviously, if you buy on Kindle, it's a lot cheaper, but I also like having the real touch of a book in my hand. So today I'm going to be doing a Goodwill book haul. I also like the Goodwill because it tends to have a variety of lesser known books. It doesn't just have the newest releases or the popular books. You can find a lot of small niche books that you've never even heard of before that you would absolutely love, like history books. And because I'm a history major in college, it would make sense that that is what I strive to find. That and old books. Lots and lots of Let's get into it. The first book I bought is by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And if you didn't know, his masterpiece is the Gulag Archipelago, which is like 3 volumes of his life in the Gulag camps, which, if you didn't know, were Soviet war Russian camps, kind of similar to like the concentration camps, but not for the point of extermination. They were work camps, but they were incredibly hard. And I actually read the complete Gulag Archipelago, all like 3 volumes, each 500 to 1,000 pages. But I found this book, and it is One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. I think I butchered that pronunciation. I don't know. But the point is, this is like a fictionalized, much shorter book than the Gulag Archipelago, and it follows this man who is taken into the gulags and has to survive in there. It is only about 140 pages, which compared to the Gulag Archipelago, which is massive and nonfiction, I thought this might be interesting. If I read it and really loved it, I could recommend it to people as an easier way to get into Solzhenitsyn without being overwhelmed with the 3 volumes of the Gulag Archipelago. The next one is a book I actually don't know much about. The problem with getting so many cheap books at the Goodwill is you're like, oh, I've never heard of this before, but it looks interesting, so let's get it. Who knows if I'll like it, but it was only like $2. And that is the Autobiography of Yogi, which Can you see? Yeah. So he was Indian religious leader, meditation leader. I'm not sure how you would categorize him, but he died in the last century. But so this book is kind of a biography of his mentality and his ideas in the life of meditation and religion. It is almost 600 pages, so this will be a fun read. The next one is by an author I absolutely love, and I've read several books by him, and that is Michael Crichton. And it's called Micro, the book. I'm not so sure if you could see that, but it makes sense because micro and macro, macro's the big stuff, micro's the small stuff, and the title is small, which is kind of ironic. Anyway, this is a book he co-wrote with Richard Preston, who sounds familiar, but I don't know if I've read him before. I'll look it up after I'm editing this video and be like, yeah, I read that book by him, which happens to me a lot. But I love Michael Crichton's work, and he's one of the rare kind of heavy science fiction, hard sci-fi, I guess he writes, that I actually absolutely love, because he tends to get into the science of things. If you've ever read Jurassic Park or its sequel, The Lost World, it really gets into the science behind making dinosaurs, which is really fascinating to me. So I'm excited to read this, even though I have no idea anything about it. But it does start with, in a locked office of a Honolulu building, 3 men are found dead with no trace of struggle except for ultra-fine razor-sharp cuts covering their bodies. It sounded interesting, a thriller combined with a science fiction. That's the best way I can describe his work. I also read another book by him, Dragon Bones. I believe it was called Dragon Bones. It was his last work. It was actually published after he passed away, and it is kind of a historical work of finding dinosaur bones in the Old West, and it's a very interesting book too. Not like Jurassic Park at all, though, and probably not like this. The next one is a big boy, and it's also another one I have been really wanting to read for a long time, and I even got it from the library at one point, and I realized that no, I do not have time to read this. And that is The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco? I'm not actually sure. I feel like I'm butchering all these names. So this book follows these two monks, I believe they're Franciscans, so they're Catholic, who are sent to this monastery to figure out who is murdering all these monks. It's kind of a murder mystery set during the Middle Ages. They actually made a famous movie of it, starring Sean Connery. And I absolutely love Sean Connery. It is about 500 pages, so it's definitely a whopper, but I've heard amazing things about it. I look forward to it. The next one is a very old book that I got, and it is Nicholas and Alexandra, The Intimate Account of the Last of the Romanovs and the Fall of Imperial Russia by Robert K. Macy? I'm not sure. It is published in 1967, so I mean definitely not that old because the dust cover is in pretty good condition, and a lot of books I get that are like from the 50s or older, the dust covers are either not there or they're really falling apart. But so this appears to be a nonfiction book, obviously about the Romanovs and the end of the Russian imperial family. So I assume it's set around like 1917 because that's when the Bolshevik Revolution was. That is when famous characters like Anastasia were executed. So I don't know much about this book, but I do want to read more about Russian history, which is why I got it. The next book I debated not showing you because it's not really a book. I mean, it is, but it is Complete Guide to Needlework. So this is a book. As you can see, I don't know if you could read that, but it says embroidery, needlepoint, knitting, applique, quilting, patchwork, macrame, crochet, rug making, and lace work. It's kind of a reference book for certain things that are crafty. My mom has a copy. I absolutely loved it. I would use it to get references of different stitches in both crocheting and knitting, and I definitely want to try my hand at lace making and other things. So definitely not a typical book, but I am really into crafts and sewing and knitting, crocheting, and winter is coming, so it's kind of a perfect time to get into knitting, because in the summer I really want to sew because you're working with lighter fabrics so you don't get hot. But during the winter you want to crochet or knit because it gets very, very cold. And the next one is a really, really big, long book. It's considered to be a tome, so over 1,000 pages, and that is The Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. Larry McMurtry. I can't enunciate. I never could. This is considered one of the greatest Western novels of all time. I've heard great things about it. I don't know that much about it. This copy in particular, it seems, because I don't know if you can see, but it has pictures of like, I don't know, actors and people from like a TV series that they made in the 80s that was adapted about this book, and that's when this particular copy of the book came out, and I am really curious to read it. It's been on my TBR for a couple years, and I remember I was going to attempt to read it and I just never found time, which is the case with most books. The next book is the only book out of any of these that I've actually read, and that is Journey Rising by Kara Kurtz. It is a high fantasy. My family owns a whole bunch of these books, and I've read the first book and I loved it, and then I read the sequel and I really didn't like it. So I didn't actually end up finishing the sequel. But this kind of follows a very young prince who has to navigate becoming ruler when there's people who want to gain power, and it's kind of about his mentor who kind of guides him to gain power and rule the kingdom. So yes, technically my family already owns a copy of this book, but I always wanted to own at least just this one, the first one of the series. Now, the next book is another big old classic, and that is An Introduction to Philosophy Through Literature. It was printed in 1950, and the best way I can describe this book is examining literature that has a lot of philosophy themes in it. So you'll find authors like Fyodor Dostoevsky. Yeah, I can like read out the authors I at least know. So Thomas Hardy, who wrote Far from the Maddening Crowd, which I read recently. Robert Frost, a famous poet. Alfred Lord Tennyson, another famous poet. William Wordsworth, another famous poet. Voltaire, who I would say is probably straight up philosophy. William Shakespeare, obviously. My point is, it has a whole bunch of like writers that wrote literature that used their books and writing to examine philosophy and topics pertaining to essential life questions. So I got this book. It's a pretty big book, but I'm excited to read it. Now, the last set of books, I guess, I was incredibly excited to find. There is this series that is called The Great Ages of Man. It is such a massive series, and I was shopping at the Goodwill and I found at least 20 of these, and I realized I really couldn't just buy all 20. I only ended up buying the 5 that I was really excited about. So these are all like history books that cover different topics. So we've got Ancient China, the cradle of civilization, the age of exploration, Ancient America, Ancient Egypt. But one thing I love about these books is just the art. So for example, this is one picture of the ancient Egypt. As you can see, very pretty. They have maps, they have things like that. Here is a picture of the ancient Americas. So my point is that these books are a really fun and amazing find, especially with me being a student of history. And for the record, I actually counted the total of how much all these books cost me, and it was $32, plus some tax for all these books, which is pretty impressive. Let me know if any of these books look interesting or good, or if you would want to read them. Also, if you've read any of these books and you like them or dislike them, I'd love to know your thoughts, opinions, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for checking out my channel, and bye.